morning, Bardstown and Nelson County. Welcome to Bradford and Brooks. Jim Brooks and Margie Bradford with you this Wednesday morning, and at least it's not raining, Margie.
No. We kind of threatening, but it isn't.
But we had a gully washer or two yesterday, I think.
Yeah, we did.
I saw on the weather last night, I think parts of Bardstown, around Bardstown, got more than 2 inches of rain. And that, and that, of course, that prompted flash flood warnings all over, especially parts of southern Nelson County. Fortunately, that all went south of my house in Cox's Creek, so.
Good.
Not all of it, but most of the heaviest part of it. So anyway, Margie, it's nice and dry outside. Hopefully, my son will get a little yard work done for me before it rains again. We'll see about that.
Did you leave a heavy hint?
Not going to hold your breath on that one.
No. No, there is rain down in Western Kentucky, so we may end up getting some of that. All right, on with our radio show. Margie and I are very pleased to have with us today Bardstown Fire Chief Todd Spalding. And Todd, you've been chief since, interim chief since, did you say what, August?
Yes, sir.
And you were formally named chief in December. And and of course you're no stranger to Bardstown and the fire department.
No, sir. Which I grew up in Bardstown, down in Samuels. Grew up right across from Happy Mackin's junkyard.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, back in the day, he actually had cows in that field. You can't get any cows in there now, but of course, back in the day, you had to have the windows open, and so you'd hear the cows mooing, and then he'd had that big loud speaker just so he could hear the phone ring out in the junkyard. So you'd hear that all hours of the night too. So. But I grew up there in Samuels. Actually, we had a house fire when I was 12 years old, and which I had loved the fire trucks and everything since I was a kid. But after we had that house fire and the firemen being there and stuff, it really, really got my interest into the fire service and stuff. So at 17, I was able to get on as a junior fireman. In '93. And I stayed for about 6 years until I had take care of my other career path and stuff. And so I stayed there. And when I left, and then I came back in 2008. And I came back as a volunteer in 2008, and then got hired on full time in 2013, which was then just a supervisor, because we didn't have officer positions besides the fire chief at that time. So when the split happened between the fire departments, then we instituted officer positions for the city at that point.
Right.
So 20 years service altogether with Bardstown, and really is great to serve the community that I grew up in, and you have a more connection with the people, because you see people that you have known for a long time and some of their worst times, and you can kind of help console them and stuff like that. So it means more serving in your hometown.
Well, for people who don't know what the split is you're talking about, would you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, yes, ma'am. So I think it was 2015. 15
and 16, in that time frame.
So it used to be the Bardstown and Nelson County Fire Department was one. They were two separate departments, but they ran under one chief. They had two different funding mechanisms. Part of it was from the city, and part of it was from the dues that were collected with the county fire department. And they had been together for
since the mid '60s.
Yeah, it was the mid '60s, so there was always some. I guess discrepancy about sometimes the full-time guys during the day would respond to county fires out in the county. So there's always who was funding what. Should city firefighters be out in the county when they're paid by the city? So there was a
question of resource management and use, depending on where you responded, because you still had separate fire departments, though apparently from the outside it would look like one big department.
Yes.
And I had heard from other chiefs that managing financially, keeping those things separate and tracking everything was a horrendous headache.
Oh, for sure. And when you got two different funding mechanisms for one organization, it really hinders the growth because one wants to give this much and one wants to give this much, or one don't want to give that much. So
Right.
it really hinders the growth. So when the split happened, it was really a benefit for both departments. So we were both
And that
able
was
to.
when?
What's that?
What year?
2015.
Okay.
Yeah. So they were able to prosper, and Bardstown took on a full-time fire department, which was really needed because the growth, the size of the city, the growth that we've had, and especially over the last 5 years, the growth has just been exponential.
Right. Yeah, it was a long time coming. And you know, in the years since, you can talk about how the city has benefited with the full-time fire department. All your fire crew are EMT certified, is that right?
Yes, sir. So we are all EMT certified. So when we instituted the full-time fire department, we said, what else other service can we give to the community? And so we got all of our staff EMT certified. So we do make all emergency medical calls within the city limits. So
Right.
we can provide life-saving care prior to EMS arrival, or we can assist EMS. We can ride in the squad to do chest compressions or, breathe for them on the way to. It takes many hands when people,
Sure.
when they become unresponsive and not breathing.
Right,
So-
right. And so if, I know we all see the fire truck heading out. It's not always a structure fire. It oftentimes is a medical run. And you guys are often, especially in the close end in the city, depending on the workload that the EMS has, which is tremendous and seems to be growing every month by month, you guys have the opportunity and are often there first, providing initial medical care. And, minutes count in a medical emergency.
Absolutely.
It does, yes. It does. And EMS, bless their heart, they're running all over the Nelson County. They're doing transfers from the hospital to Louisville. And so, they only have 4 squads.
Right.
So, they're really running their tails off. And so we can sometimes get there before they do, and we can provide that supplemental care prior to EMS. I know that EMS has the paramedics that they can push drugs and things like that we can't do. So they can provide a next level of care that
Right.
fire can't. But, on top of, EMS calls, we also do rope rescue. We do swift water rescue, confined space rescue, trench rescue.
What is rope rescue?
So, like if somebody, a lot of our technical disciplines, what they're called, like rope, swift water, confined space, we have to use ropes and set up rope systems to perform that rescue. So rope is kind of the base of what we
Right.
need to conduct all those other rescues. Or if somebody falls off a cliff, we'll set up a rope
Right.
system to rappel
Yeah.
down and get them. So we kind of hazardous materials. We do that as well. So we catch a lot of things that we do. So we do a lot of training. We have to get 100 hours a year in just fire, 24 hours a year in EMS, and then another 16 hours in rope, swift water.
So where do you get
confined
this
space.
training?
We mostly do it in-house. We have to go through, and firemen have to go through an instructor class, and so they get that certification to be able to teach our firemen. So most of our officers are instructors, and then there's an instructor 2 certification to where you can write your own curriculum. If you're just an instructor 1, you have to follow a state's curriculum. So.
Well, Todd, what changes have you in your career? And I know that the merger was a big change. How has firefighting changed, say, in the last 10 years or so? I mean, as far as technology goes, I know that I recall the shift from, I guess, aluminum tanks on the air packs to carbon fiber, which lightened the load, I hope.
Yes, yeah.
But what other changes, either technology or practical application of firefighting techniques how has it changed since you've been since, say, 10 years ago?
Well, So the SCBA packs, like you said, the tanks are lighter, which is we greatly appreciate that versus the steel tanks, because our gear with everything weighs about 50 pounds, and the gear it protects you a lot more from the heat, which can be a great thing and a bad thing, because it is protecting you, but you can't. Back in the day, you could kind of feel the heat and know, hey, I'm getting too far in, or
Right.
I need to come out a little bit because it's getting dangerous in here. You would actually start to feel the heat on your ears, because that's your hood used to be one of the thinnest parts of your gear, so you would feel it on the heat on your ears to know that, oh, I need to back out, or so that part. So now on the SCBA's, there's a temperature gauge kind of on there, and it'll give you an alert that say, hey, you're getting into 400 degrees.
Wow.
You need to start to, think about backing out. You're getting into a high temperature.
Wow.
So that really helps. Our hydraulic tools that we use for extrication, they used to run off a hydraulic pump, and you had hoses you had to mess with. You had to get
Right.
the pump so close to the wreck scene. Now they're battery operated. So, that gives us a lot of freedom.
Wow.
And they carry the same amount of torque as a hydraulic tool. And so that's been some really nice changes to the fire service with technology. And of course, mapping systems. We have iPads in our trucks that we can instantly see where the hydrant locations are on the way en route to the scene. We can pull up, say we had a fire Fuji seal, we could see, how to navigate through that building, because we can pull up maps. So all those things help us.
Wow.
And seconds matter.
Wow, that's great. I didn't know you had the technology is really beneficial,
Oh, yeah, for
especially
sure.
if you can find out those things on the way.
Now, if it works right. You know how technology is. It's great when it works, but
Well, that's true. That's true.
On an average, how many times a day would you say that your crew's on the road?
probably about, we average about 1,700 calls a year, so we can be doing anywhere. Some days we'll have 10, some days we'll have 4. You know, it just varies. And usually when bad weather comes in, that we usually get a lot of calls then for fire alarms, power lines down. You know, there's always possibility of lightning striking a structure.
Right.
So we just a couple weeks ago, we had that bad storm come through, and we had a lightning strike on a building. So, yeah, we get a lot of that.
Well, talk to us a little bit about how the staffing works, about how, how long the people, your firemen are there at the station, ready to go, and how that works.
Okay. So we have 3 shifts, and we have 7 on the shift. We used to just have 6, but we're very gracious that Mayor Heaton and the City Council approved us to get 3 additional personnel, and we got those hired in July, and so we have them now. So we now have 7 per shift. So just back in June, we had 6. And we would run 2 apparatus, one out of Station 2, which is City Hall, and then an aerial device out of Station 1. So now with the additional personnel, we can run 3 apparatus. We're running an engine out of Station 2, an engine out of Station 1, and then an aerial out of Station 1. So we got 2 on the aerial, 2 on the engine at Station 1, and 3 on the engine at Station 3. So now our engine is making the medical response calls from Station 1, so that kind of reduces the wear and tear on our aerial device, which is valued at about $1.2 million right now.
Right.
So that's kind of helped that. So they work 48 on. So they're there for 2 straight days, and then they got 4 days off. And so they used to do 24-48, and we changed that in January. They really love this 48-96 because they get more weekends at home with their family.
Sure.
And it feels like they got more downtime, because when they work 24-48, it's like when you got off in the morning, it was 8 o'clock, and then you got that free day, and then you got the other day, and then you got going back. So they get a lot more time on weekends at home, and they really like that, with having that time with their family.
Well, now, as we were discussing earlier before we came on the air about sometimes you'll see the fire truck at Kroger's.
Yeah.
So tell us why that would be.
So, we always have to be ready to respond. As you said, Jim, minutes matter. So, when the crew goes to, they have to keep their crew together because we got to have 2 people go in to a fire, all the time. So we can't split the crew up. So, those crews are put together so that we can meet the OSHA requirements. So we have to have 2 people go in, we got to have 2 people outside, unless there's a rescue, and then we don't have to follow that standard. We can go in without the other 2 people outside. But if we're just fighting fire, we got to have 2 people inside, 2 people outside.
Yes, but they were going to the Kroger for a particular reason.
Yep, so they got to get their groceries. They eat dinner. They're kind of like a family. They're there 2 days together. They spend a third of their life together. They're together, so they cook dinner together. They eat dinner together. Some of my guys, they pray before dinner and stuff like that. So they become a family, and they take turns cooking. And unless you're a terrible cook, then you get to do all the dishes.
So they need groceries for their meals. They have to go to the Kroger store.
Yeah.
And they have to drive the truck because they have to be ready to go if they get the call.
That's right.
Even if they're in the middle of the squash aisle.
Yep. They'll take off from wherever they are, and they'll get in that truck, and they'll get responding. So the standard is we get responding within 60 seconds. So,
So what would you say your all's average response time is? I know that's a metric that you all usually track. How quickly out the door do you have the first truck?
Usually we hit about 90 seconds.
Wow.
Which is tough when you're at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
You're going from a dead sleep to generally like when I had to pull a shift, I would sleep in my gym shorts, and then I would just throw my shirt and my socks on real quick and we'll go out the door. And then within 5 minutes, you get out the door in 90 seconds. Usually you're on scene within 5 minutes. And within 5 minutes, you're crawling through somebody's house with zero visibility that you've never been in. And that's why heart attacks are very prevalent in the fire service because you're going from 0 to 100 in such a short amount of time.
Now, do you? You say respond in 90 seconds. Can you get dressed in that length in the suits and equipment that you have to wear?
Yeah. So the way our gear's set up, the boots and stuff are already in the bunker, so you just got to step into your boots and you pull your suspenders up to your shoulders, and then you throw your coat on and your hood, and then you put your air pack on while you're going to the scene. So, and during that time, the officer's looking to where his hydrant locations are and figuring out what his strategy and tactics are going to be.
Wow. I can remember when the response times, of course, this is going back a few years, was measured in minutes, and several minutes was a really good time.
Yes.
Of course, that was in the days before full-time fire department.
Yeah. Which back in the day, Jim, back in '93, the volunteer side of it was pretty proficient. It was we could get trucks out the door in 5-6 minutes. I mean, when I was a volunteer, I had to get in my car at home and get there as fast as I could, and then get my gear on as fast as I could because I did not want that truck to leave without me. And so you were trying to get that gear on as fast as you could so you can get on that truck, and people were running to get on that truck. They didn't want to be left at the station. So that's what you volunteer for. You want to be on that truck.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, I grew up with a volunteer firefighter across the street, Johnny Avis, and he had a big block Chevy pickup truck with the red bubblegum light on top of it.
Yeah.
And he would back out. You could hear him fire that truck up. And I knew, even before the fire whistle was going off at that time, and I could hear him, and I'd run to the sidewalk just to watch him. And he'd come flying backwards out, and he'd throw it in gear and just burn rubber all the way down the street because he wanted to get there. He told me later, he said he was always trying to pride himself getting there first before any other volunteers. I don't know if he made it, but he sure made it entertaining to watch.
For sure.
But I know he was a very dedicated volunteer as well. And I think, people, it always amazes me. I think I have utmost respect for volunteers, or any firefighters, anybody in the fire service, because it's not the natural thing to run into a burning building.
No.
And we have to have people that and that are fully trained and understand what they're doing. We certainly don't want anybody to get hurt, but and that's the benefits having a paid, professionally trained fire department.
Yeah, it greatly reduces the amount of response time, and we this is what we do for a living. So we have that time to dedicate to training and becoming more proficient, because this is our job. This is what we do. I can remember as a volunteer, I try to make as many trainings as I could, and with the volunteer side now, it's really even harder because people are working overtime. They got kids who are on AAU and sports, and it's just the time constraints are just really hard on volunteers, and the families have to support whoever that volunteer is, leaving from dinner and all that kind of stuff. So it's a lot on a volunteer, and but we take pride in what we do, and I don't think since we've had a full-time fire department that we've had to tear down a building, from a fire, besides Hunan.
Right.
And that was some extenuating circumstances on that that I can't really
go into.
Yeah, or some legal issues there.
Right.
But mostly they just fix what was damaged, and they don't have to tear down the building, which is great for. You don't have that eyesore sitting there like Hunan's was for a long time, and you don't want that. Bardstown's beautiful, and especially our downtown. Limiting that damage is so important to our economy, and our visitors that come here. It's just very important.
Well, when I was, you mentioned that you all had a house fire when you were young. We did too. We had a air conditioner. It was an old window air conditioner, and we thought we were in high cotton at that time. Anyway, we had it on an extension cord.
Yeah.
Well, as you can imagine, the extension cord got hot, and it set the drapes on fire. And so, and I don't know, my mother woke up, and there was smoke in her bedroom, and so they went out, and the wall looked like it was on fire, but the drapes were burning. And so they woke us all up, and we all got out, and so the volunteers were coming. My father ended up mostly putting the fire out with pans of water, just throwing it on it, and got it beat down enough and kept it from spreading. Because I remember our bedroom was upstairs, and so when I went over where that fire was, the floor was hot. And I'm like, well, if that had burned through into upstairs, we would have been jumping out a second-story window. But yeah, I never having the fire department show up was such a, they pulled the smoke out of the house, made sure everything was safe. It was, and of course, I was just a young kid. I might have been 8 or 9, but that certainly made an impression on me on the value of a fire department. And certainly, now I will tell you, I didn't seek out being a volunteer, but I knew a number of volunteer firefighters. I know Chief Aiken's son, I can't remember his name. He was a junior firefighter. He was about my age, but he was a junior firefighter for a while, and some other guys were back in the day. But anyway, my hat's off to all the firefighters. And I tell you, the people that don't get mentioned in these conversations are the families that support those firefighters.
They're right. Because
it's not easy to be a spouse or a family member of a firefighter who's going to be gone for a couple of days at a time, and especially a volunteer if that pager or whatever system they use now goes off, and they need to respond. It's tough.
Yes,
it's tough, and so you're not just all firefighters and volunteers and full time have to have the support of their family.
Yes, sir.
To be successful.
For sure. Yeah. I always had when I got off the department, and then I rejoined in 2008. I had a new wife at the time, and I was like, hey, you care if I get back on the department? And, this is what it's going to take. I got trained almost on every Monday, and there'll be times I have to leave dinner, and I have to, get out of bed in the middle of the night and make sure, I had her support. And so, and she gave me her support and stuff. And it's, it's still kind of surreal for me that going from a volunteer to now I'm the fire chief, and it's really surreal. I'm very blessed and thankful.
Well, yeah, I'm going all the way back to, Arch Pendergrass, who was a neighbor of mine on Maple Hill, longtime fire chief, and I think I looked up the documents that incorporated the volunteer fire department. Of course, he was the chief signer on that at the time. But you're a long legacy of fire professionals in the county.
Yeah,
and we're lucky to have somebody with your experience and somebody from here who understands, the nuances of being in Bardstown and Nelson County.
Yeah, there's different challenges for our town and stuff with the bourbon capital of the world and stuff, and so we try to take that into consideration in our operations and tactics, and of course I don't know, and Margie, I know you were talking about this earlier, that we're the only full-time fire department in Nelson County. And a lot of people don't know that they just see a firehouse and they think it's manned. But Bardstown's the only full-time fire department in Nelson County, which there's 7 departments in Nelson County. And so all the other ones are volunteers.
Mm-hmm. And expound on that a little bit. Where are these?
So you got New Hope, you got New Haven, now it's Rolling Fork, because New Haven merged with Rolling Fork. Northeast Nelson Fire Department, Nelson County Fire Department,
Boston
Fire Department, and then Bardstown.
And they are all staffed by volunteers.
Yes, ma'am. Besides Bardstown Fire Department, yeah. So.
Well, I mean that's important. This is a big county.
Yeah.
And if they had to wait for a fire truck from downtown Bardstown to get in the far reaches of the county, the house would be gone.
Yeah, definitely placement of fire departments and their location helps reduce the property loss. And so.
Right, but even out in the county like where I live, I think our ISO rating's either a 9 or a 10.
Yeah.
Simply because we're served by a volunteer fire department. It's 8 miles away.
Yeah.
Well, no, let's talk about the iOS, because I don't. ISO. Okay. Well, I'm just as ignorant as I can possibly be about that. So tell us about it.
So ISO is an insurance service office rating, and that is done by the Insurance Service Office, and they take into consideration there's 3 categories that you get points from, and that's your fire protection, the fire department, how they're structured, how many people that they have, the location of their fire stations, and then there's water supply, so that's more of your water department, with the placement of hydrants. You get reduction in your insurance if you have a hydrant within 1,000 feet of your home. That makes a big difference. And then dispatch. So dispatch is very important too in our insurance service office rating, which is currently we are a 3. So hopefully we'll get that lowered down to a 2, which is, there's not very many departments in the United States that have a 1 or 2 rating. But
now, Todd, you all. The Bardstown had been at a 5 for a long time.
Yes, sir.
And then to shift that needle, to drop that down, it takes considerable amount of work and progress. And those ratings aren't. It's no walk in the park to get that for an ISO. What they call it, evaluation or survey.
Yes.
And to get it dropped down to a 3 was quite quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, and it takes facilities like our training center that we have out there. They take that into consideration. The amount of training hours that we have and what training hours we have those in, like officer training and hazmat training and fire training and all that. And then also our response times. They look at that. So, and then our guys, so we don't just make calls. They also do fire prevention activities, which is going out and inspecting local businesses to make sure that they're following the fire code. You know, if we can prevent a fire before it happens, then that's what we want to do. So they do that. They do, we have to go out and test all the fire hydrants in the city limits. So that's about 900 hydrants a year that we got to test. And so we do all that on top of our training and on top of making calls and stuff. So I know sometimes you see on Chicago Fire, they're just sitting around on the couch waiting for a fire call to come in. And really they're making, some of them are making 15 calls a day. And so they need that rest. And, you know, we don't have that much call volume. So our guys are doing all those other things that they have other divisions do. Like they have a whole fire prevention division that just takes care of fire prevention. But we have to, being such a small department, we got to kind of do it all.
And wear many hats. Yeah,
like the crew I have today, they're my mechanics. They've gotten their, so you have to have a certification to work on emergency apparatus. So they've gotten those certifications, and so they work on our apparatus when they can, and they save the city thousands of dollars in cost by doing that themselves. So.
Well, even if they can just do routine maintenance, that's a big savings as well.
Yes.
You know, of not having to farm that out to somebody else.
Yeah.
Well, now, as fire chief, you can't be there 24 hours a day.
No, I'm on call quite a bit. You know, I only live 3 miles from town, and like I said, we're a small department, so pretty much me and the assistant chief, we try to stay available because, you know, if we have a structure fire, then our officers are fighting fire, so there's nobody to really have command of the scene to bring in additional resources or to manage that scene and keep everybody safe. So we try to stay available, one of us, all the time. So it's a big commitment on our part to, but you know, the safety of our guys was very, very important to us. So being there for them and giving them that support, which I have an awesome staff. They're very great. Even some of the new people that we have, they're hustlers. They train hard. They take pride in what they do. And I would put my guys up against any Louisville Fire, anything like that.
All right. Well, Chief, we need to take a commercial break here, get some commercial messages in. You're listening to Bradford and Brooks, and we'll be back in just a few moments and continue our discussion with Bardstown Fire Chief Todd Spalding. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Time now for
All right, you're back with Bradford and Brooks, Jim Brooks and Margie Bradford, and our very special guest, Todd Spalding, Bardstown Fire Chief Todd Spalding. Well, Chief Spalding, I know we were talking before the break about, Margie's telephone has interrupted my train of thought.
Sorry.
You had a couple points you wanted to make?
Yes, Jim. So I was talking about renter's insurance.
Oh, that's right, renter's insurance.
Yeah, most people don't have it, and it's sad because, you know, we make these calls to renters, and, you know, they lose almost a lot of their things that they have are smoke damaged, and, you know, they can't even afford to get somebody to come in and clean it for them. So that renter's insurance is so important, and it's only, you can check with your local agent, but anywhere from like $7 to $20 a month. So it's well worth the money to do that. And back, I think it had been 4 or 5 years ago, we had that storage building that caught fire out on Philiatry Lane or Parkway Drive.
Right.
And there was like 20 units in there, and none of them had renter's insurance. So everything they had in that storage, they lost.
Yeah,
I didn't know you could
think of that.
I didn't even think about renter's insurance for storage.
Yeah. So that renter's insurance, definitely you need to have it. It's well worth the money. I know sometimes funds are tight, but when you have even a small fire, it can smoke damage all your
Right.
stuff.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they can clean it. Those professional companies, but it's expensive, and that insurance company will take care of it. But
Right.
and also, smoke detectors, they do save lives. I mean, I can't tell you how many calls we've made where smoke detectors woke up whoever fell asleep, and they were able to get out of the house, and they do save lives. And
Well, does Bardstown have any kind of a program where people who really maybe can't afford smoke detectors can get smoke detectors?
yes, we'll do it in the city limits. We'll come and install smoke detectors in your home. Now, we have to install them because they are donated by the Red Cross, and we have to fill out some paperwork and stuff. But we will come and install them at your residence. Now, if you rent, it's up to the landlord to take care of installing those smoke detectors. And if your landlord's not doing that, please call the fire station, and we can enforce the fire code to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing as a landlord.
I see. Okay, so if you're renting, somebody, the landlord should have that in there and monitor it?
Yeah, so they need to make sure, check it once a year, but it's up to the
Right.
tenant to make sure it's working monthly.
Right.
But yeah, it's very, very important to have those smoke detectors in there.
Now, is it required in the city for rental units to have smoke detectors?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, there's an ordinance for that.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, we got about 3 minutes left, Chief. You don't hear a lot of cautions about, burning outside when we've in periods of rain. What's what cautions would you have issue to people about either burning outside or other possible fire hazards that people may not think about this time of year?
So, we've had calls where they put their grill too close to the house. And sometimes you cooking hamburgers, depends on how good of a cook you are, sometimes that'll get away from you, and that fire will go up into your soffit. And then next thing you know, it's up into your attic.
Right.
And so, that's something always people forget about. And
Yeah.
so make sure that your grill's far enough from your house that you're not going to catch your house on fire. And
Right.
Yeah,
It's amazing how hot it is above the flames. That heat as it rises. It really, I've experienced something like that before. I started my grill too close to my overhead door on my garage, and it has a nylon cord that hangs down. Well, doesn't have a nylon cord anymore. I had to replace it after it pretty much melted away due to the heat.
Jim, you just told me about you had a cooking fire too. I think me and you might have to sit down after the show here and get you straightened out here.
Well, those incidents were few and we're 25 years apart. So,
Oh, okay.
So maybe that's not a bad record. Maybe.
No, that's not. That's a pretty good record, Jim.
I tell you what, though, I did keep that spatula that I melted. I kept that as a reminder. Never walk away from a hot stove. And a lot of stoves today have a light that will warn you if the burners are still hot.
Yeah.
Or if a burner's on, and you can visually see that from
Right.
across the room or
Right.
something, and that's a big help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, the ancient equipment I was using 30 years ago had no warning except, ouch, that's hot.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Chief, we're just about down to the wire. I appreciate you coming in today.
I appreciate you all having me. Nice to meet you, Margie.
Well,
I really enjoyed this, and we're Bardstown Fire Department's going to do the best that we can to protect our citizens here in Bardstown, and we're going to train hard to make sure we're ready for
Right.
whatever event comes up.
Well, we appreciate all the work that you and your staff do, and all the sacrifices their families make to make sure they're able to do that work. So, anyway, well, Chief, we'll let you get back to work, and again, I appreciate your leadership. I know I've seen you at city council meetings going back quite a ways, and you've always impressed me. You're a quiet form of leadership, but like you said, you try to lead by example, and
Yes,
I think
sir.
it doesn't get better than that. That's what people need to see.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, and kudos to Mayor Heaton and the council for making a great choice for Fire Chief.
Thank you.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this week's Bradford and Brooks. Margie and I will be back next Wednesday. And actually, I think our guest next week, Margie,
It's Mayor Heaton.
Mayor Dick Heaton will be our guest. So we will be back next Wednesday, 11 a.m., with the Mayor of Bardstown. Until then, have a great week and have a safe week, everybody.